Hey, this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. I wanted to back out here. This is actually Monday, October the 1st. This is our chart lesson for today. I wanted to back out a little bit here and show you. You hear me talk about it every now and then. We had this gap here from the overnight. This is where prices closed on Friday, and this is where they opened Sunday evening when the market reopened. And you can see there's a gap in there. And generally those gaps are filled rather quickly. And this one was filled before the end of the day, and we had this huge rally here, but once it was over, it was all downhill from there. And it took this downhill move a little bit of time to build up speed, but eventually we had some really good short setups in addition to this long setup. So overall, it was a really good trading day if you were following the price action. But if you got blinded by this right here, and then all of a sudden you're doing nothing but looking for longs, then you may not have done so well. And but anyway, hopefully by this point you really realize we were in a downtrend, and you might have been able to get some of this down movement. But let me just show you. We'll start here. There was actually a trade here, a double bottom right at the open, and you can see prices were struggling to come back down here. You got a doji, and then we went right below it. So it's really a two-legged pullback right to the EMA, and we rallied off that. So that's generally usually a pretty good setup, and it was an easy scalp. No real long runners out of that because they came back and got the runners right before this news item came out at 9. And then look at that, man, look at that move. That's a beautiful thing. And notice this is two legs back to the EMA, a second entry, EMA and the trend line. We didn't really have the trend line in place yet, but as you can see, I probably should have put this line. That's a breakout pullback long. Prices broke above these highs right here and pulled back and tested it and then rocketed off. And you had this little tiny doji right there, right going along right above that. Was a good trade, and look, it just exploded out of there and never looked back. So you had a chance to get quite a few points out of this, even on a runner. And there was a short up here, but boy, this is dangerous short in this stuff, especially the way things have gone lately. We've had some moves where prices just keep going up and up and up, and really there were several chances here where it looked like it was a good opportunity to short, but notice how prices never really broke below any of these bars on the way up. Notice that. So as long as you waited until at least prices broke, you wouldn't have got short till right here. You probably still would have got stopped out. But generally what you got to do is you got to wait till there's some overlap like this. You got multiple bars, and then wait on the break higher, and then wait on the setup. And if you shorted below the first bar that broke lower right there, you were short at high. You didn't get any runners really off of that. I didn't take this trade. I wanted to really badly, but I just, the last few times that prices have broke higher like this, they've just continued to go on and on much further than you would expect. And so I was a little bit leery of and I couldn't really find a trend channel line either there. And if you draw that, you see there's no, you got to assume that was probably it right there, but I wasn't 100% sure because I thought maybe this was it over here. And you see we went right on through that, and there wasn't, even if you went right here, we went right on through it. So there was no real good place to find, and that could have been it right there, I guess. But generally when you got to go into the previous day, it's not a very good choice. It's usually going to be prices that are higher than where you get your two swings. So that means it's up here, and that looks like that's probably it. So but I wasn't going to gamble on that, so I didn't take this trade. But if you saw that, notice the overlap right here, and then we went higher and then sold off. And if you did see that, it was a setup, and I wanted to take it, but it's just not a good one, and it's not a smart trade, so I didn't mark it. But I did feel like it was worth talking about. Now, this is the first opportunity we had prices come back to the trend line, and generally you got to wait on a second entry counting off the lows when you come back here, when you got all this overlap. And notice we had a new low, we went higher, we pulled back, and then we went higher, and we closed inside that trend line both times. So that was a it wasn't a great long, but that was a good long right there, and you can see that was an easy scalp. You didn't get much more than that, and then we went right back into the same stuff. So there's no real trades in here. Then we tried to go higher once, we tried to go higher twice, and now we're against this trend line. And notice how everything's closing up here. And again, this was not a great setup, but you had a long trap right there. And so you're thinking prices will probably at least come back down here and test this, and there's enough room to scalp out. So if you saw that and took it, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not a really good setup because there's so much overlap. So that for that reason, I marked it in green. Now, the first really decent trade we had to the short side was right here. And notice we've got a couple of legs up. We actually went up. We went into this little range. First entry short, then we went higher, and there's your second entry short right there, right off the trend line, suspected trend line. And if you missed that, there was another chance to enter right here below this bar, and you're getting short really far into it over here. But you had to be thinking we were going to get at least another leg like this, and that's what I was looking for. I just was waiting, and we had it right there. Actually, we'd already had that leg right there, so disregard that. I was thinking that we didn't quite make it. But either way, it's still a pull back to the trend line, 2 legs back, a second entry short, and then you got a double top right here at the trend line, and that's always a good setup. So either one of those was a good entry, and you can see how quickly prices move down. And I actually went short on this one right here, and I can't remember if I added on right here. Actually, they came back and got my stop, so I don't think I added back on there. I can't remember, but this was a good setup all the same. And it was off to the races. Then you really had an opportunity to go long here, but there's too much overlap, 2 legs back, so that's a 2-legged pull back to the EMA, and another chance to get short below that bar right there, an easy scalp, nothing more. And then with all this overlap and us bouncing off this low again right there, it was worth trying to get a scalp back up to the top, and if you took that, you actually got a whole lot more in the scalp, and because your runners were easily safe. Then again, another chance to get short off 2 tests to that trend line right there, and boy, it was off to the races again. And then this is where I was looking for the second leg down, and you got your first one right there, and then I was looking for a second one, and you can see that's exactly what we got right there. So this was a great setup right here, and then you basically just had to manage that trade the rest of the day. Any runners were easily safe, and you should have been thinking about exiting when we filled that gap, and that's about where we got to, and nothing more for the rest of the day. So, and by this time it was really too late, and there was a breakout pullback short here, but it's not a really good setup after a move that strong and a break below. There's a strong chance we could come back to the EMA or the trend line again before trying it, and you never know. After we'd already bounced at that level 1, 2, 3, 4, and now 5 times, you never know what's going to happen. So there was a short there, but you just never know if we're not going to bounce again. So it wasn't worth really trying to get in this far, because that's already a huge move down. And even though it would have worked out, how many times have you seen that once prices go lower like that they bounce? So it's a risky trade. For that reason, I did not mark it, because I just didn't like it. It's really getting late in the day here, and you can see what happens when you get short this late in the day. If you didn't exit down here, then prices are chopping around back up in here near your entry the whole rest of the day, and you would be lucky to get out of that, unless you one of these next moves down, you got what you could out of the trade and exited it. So it's just not worth risking something like that late in the day on a failed break, because generally there's a good opportunity that you're coming back to test that trend line or the EMA, or you notice you got this breakout that was never tested. And that's another thing to show you here. When we broke higher above this, notice how prices never pulled back. There's a little bit of a stem here, but that's not good enough. You're usually going to have to get more of a pullback to test that breakout area, and that never happened until right in here. And so that was another reason to be thinking we're coming back here. And this is one other thing I want to share with you. Whenever you get a news spike in any direction, and generally it doesn't take this long, but generally right away after you get a news spike like that, prices almost always come back and take that news spike away. Very rarely you'll get a news spike and prices just keep going. Generally what will happen is prices at the very least will come back and fill that gap and start over again and then work higher. And today you can see they filled that little news spike right there, and it tried to bounce but it couldn't do it. But we still had this gap down here, so now that they had all this momentum, there was a good chance we were coming back down to fill that gap. And you should have gotten your trend channel line. At first I thought maybe that was it, but it looks like it was all the way down here, and you can see that now. But regardless of whether you saw that or not, you should have easily seen that we're trending down here. And it's really a nice three-legged move down almost. You got leg one, and there's actually two legs in there, but that's the first move, a correction, second move, correction, and the third move down. So, but that was pretty much it for today. Hopefully you had a good trading day. I kind of enjoyed today. It was, once you got in, there were some fairly good moves. It was just a little tough from about, I'd say 9:15 to about 10:40, 10:45, somewhere in that range. This was a little tough, and you had to be willing to sit tight. There was a long here, and there was actually a short up here, but with all these overlapping bars, it's just not a wise place to enter, and you were really risking it if you were going short right in here, because it could have easily bounced higher and tested this high again. And one other thing I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to call it a day. Notice my trend line coming up through here. Notice what happened. Prices broke it and then came back and tested it and then turned down. And when we talked about that Friday, so and then let's look at this one right here. This was the one coming up through right here. And notice what happened. We kind of broke that trend line, then came back up and tried to test it. Depending if you really got the closes, then which I try to do a lot of times, I've noticed it'll be off the closes. And if you notice that, we broke it right there. We came back and tested it, and off we went. And then you got one right here. It's probably going to be more like that. And we broke it. We came back and tested it, and then went down. And so continue to play with this. It's fairly interesting. Then we kind of got this little down move right here. We broke it, came back and tested it, and then went up. So, when it's happening in real time, it's a little harder to see it. But try to find it, because sometimes they're real simple and sometimes they're not so simple. But let's just look at one more here. You got this big move down. And that's probably... that one's so steep that it's almost hard to come back and test it. Maybe that one right there, because that gets the closes. You get the close there, you get the close there, and kind of broke above it, then retested it. But really, that's probably more from this, so that's not really a good one there. I can't really see anything on that one. Let's look at this one. And you kind of got prices coming up through there like so. Broke it, you tried to go back up and test it, and then sold off. So anyway, just something to play with, keep looking at. Sometimes it's really, really clear. Sometimes it's not so clear. But it's worth looking at, I believe. At least it may help you to try to stay on the right side of the market without getting in too soon. Because, it looked like this was the place to enter right here. But you shouldn't have been entering right there because of all the overlap to begin with. But if you draw that trend line up through there on those closes right through there, then you see there's the first break. There's the first real show of bearishness. Then you pull back, and then there's your second entry short. And then boom, look at that. So you got to remember to watch for that. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.